As we design our tiny home, there's going to be a few things that we want to keep in mind as we work. And there's a few rules about architecture that are going to be helpful to you. To see the previous video that talks about this particular unit I'm using with my students, just click the link at the top of the video. So one of the rules we need to kind of pay attention to is this rule of 3, and it's 3 squares wide to be a door. If you need to get into a room, it has to be 3 squares wide. You also need 3 squares of passing space. So in front of the toilet, there's 3 squares. Between the sink and the toilet, there's about 3. You can go as small as 2.5, but no smaller than that. So this little utility closet, which has the washer dryer, is only 2.5 squares wide. You can't go smaller than that, or legally you can't build the building. Even the bed is going to have 3 squares next to it so you can actually get to the bed. So we call this the passing space. So let's say you wanted to design an island to go into your kitchen. If you put it here, now you only have 2 squares of passing space. And that's really not enough for a human being to comfortably pass through. So you're going to want to set it at least 3 squares away from the counters so people can pass through and work. The issue is that it might set up some problems, like this door is going to hit there. So you're going to need to either move the island or have the door go the other direction. So we're going to set that little island off to the side. There are going to be some symbols that are common to architecture models that you're going to be using, and these are just a few of them. You can look up more if you would like to. So for walls, you can simply make, a wall with a double line. If it is a thick wall, that might be an exterior wall in a very cold or a very warm place. Each square represents 1 foot, so this is 1 square foot wide. To show a door, you just have a line that's 3 foot long that goes offset from the doorway. Regular walls and interior walls can be 1/2 square wide, and windows are shown with just a single line between 2 walls. Now we don't know how tall or short that window is, but that's going to tell you where the window belongs. Some people, when they do architecture units, they don't leave enough room for the bed, but for a twin bed, you're going to need about 3 by 6 squares, all the way up to a king bed, which could be 6 by 6 squares. Counter space needs to be at least 2 squares wide, but 2.5 is standard in a house. But you could go as small as 2, but that's not very generous. You need 3 foot passing space, so that's what I've denoted here between the island and the kitchen area. And you can label things so people know when they look at your drawing that that's a fridge, that's a dishwasher, those are counters. Chairs need to be 2 by 2 squares. It can be circular or square. Toilets are going to be 2 by 2.5. Sinks, the smallest sink that you could make is 2 by 2 squares as well. If you need to show stairways, then don't forget to have a landing space where you enter the stairs and exit the stairs. They can't just end at a wall. So you can have an angled entryway, or you could have a square landing, and just draw it like a ladder with a line at each square. This is going to be 3 squares wide because as you walk up the stairs, you need to have space for your elbows to get by. You could also do a spiral staircase if you would like to, but remember you need to have at least 2.5 to 3 squares wide on each side so that you can walk up the stairs. And because it's a circle, we need to double that measurement. Remember, if you're going to design a house that's circular and you're going to hit that 600 square foot size, which is what we're aiming for, only 26 squares for a circle, 28 squares for an octagon, and 30 squares for a hexagon. So now that we've completed our design, we're ready to start working on foam core. This is a special kind of foam core that's called ghost line foam board, and you can see in some of the reflection, the grid is there, but it's very hard to see. But it helps us line things up and to transfer our design. When you go from your drawn design onto your foam model, it's okay to make some adjustments if you found that you had some problems in your design. So as I looked at mine, I had a little bit too short of a space between the toilet and the sink, so I made an adjustment there. And this doorway was maybe a little short as well, so I changed that to the standard 3 foot wide door here. So you can make some adjustments. The nice thing about working on a grid is that the width of the building is also going to be the width of the walls, and then the other direction that's true too. And I can use the standard height of 8 foot. So in most buildings, the minimum height of a ceiling is going to be 8 feet. So I can just count 8 squares. And the height of a door should be at least 7 squares. Now you could make it taller, but you can't go shorter than 8 because that's going to be kind of a legal standard so that your building is actually one that could be created. We're going to be using razors to cut our foam board, and you should always remember that you keep your razor capped when you're not using it. They're very sharp. It's like a medical instrument. And as you cut, you generally will be cutting towards yourself because that's where you have the most control of your knife. You don't want to be cutting sideways and then it lifts out and goes somewhere where you hadn't intended. So that means you will be turning your board in order to cut around your forms. What I do is all my vertical cuts, and then I turn it and then do my horizontal cuts, always cutting towards myself carefully and making sure that my hand is away from the blade as I do that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove some of these that I have already pre-cut, and we're going to take a look at some of the assembly of this model. So a little trick that you can do as you cut parts out for your model is when you cut out your doors, you can go ahead and cut out the parts where you know the door has to open. But on the hinge part, I draw a dotted line, and that way I know to only cut halfway through, because when I lift this, I can go ahead and put that on a hinge so it's as if the door can actually swing open. It's a nice thing that I can use when I'm building my model. And this will go here because here's the window design and here's the window here. And I want the door to swing outward. In most houses, you'll notice that the door will tend to swing outward. It's a safety thing. So if there were people trapped inside, they could easily just push and get out of the room. So we're going to be using hot glue. And some people put the hot glue on the edge where the foam is, and that's not generally a good idea. What you want to do is put the glue where it's going to be touching the foam, and that way it doesn't accidentally melt the foam. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the edge. This is the paper surface, and then I can go ahead and hold my wall in there, and you want to press and hold, give a little bit of pressure to that, and then it should hold nicely. So hot glue is a great way to kind of start putting things together. It is important that before you start putting up your walls that everything has been drawn and traced with a ruler and a pen, because once you get the walls in here, if you're trying to get in there and draw in all of this stuff, it's not going to look as neat. So make sure that all of your drawing is done before you start putting up your walls. And then you also want to line things up and make sure, because if I accidentally put this in this way, you can see here's the window, but here's the window in the drawing. So that means I need to flip that around. And again, instead of putting glue directly on the foam, I'm going to put it on the paper that coats the foam. So I just use a little bit. And then I would go ahead and line that up. And hot glue is hot. I mean, that's the name of it. So it's really important not to get it on your fingers. If you have a little drip, use a popsicle stick or something to kind of whoosh that away. Another tip that you can use to help build your space is if you cut strips of the Ghost Line foam board into 8-inch or 8 squares tall strips, then you can do this for your inner walls, and you can just kind of line it up, draw a dot, and then figure out where things need to go. So for your inner walls, sometimes doing that is a nice thing to do, and if you cut them 8 squares tall, it's all ready to go, and this will go fast in assembling your tiny home. So if you'd like some more information, click on the link in the description below, and thank you for joining us.